He gave us what is now known as the 5 books of Moses, in the word Samaish, the 5 books of the Torah. But he also gave enough interpretations to what is written in the words to be able to understand them, but he kept those interpretations and explanations oral. And that was Moshe Rabbeinu's responsibility to understand and remember and memorize all the information that God had given him and to pass it on to the people that he would come down to teach, and they would pass it on to the new generation after him, and then all the generations forever would continuously pass down the teachings. If in fact everything was written down, everything would be finite. And if times changed, there was no way you would know how to adapt the information to current times, because it simply said what it said in a finite manner. There's just no way to understand how it applies in different situations. The Torah is a Torah of life. Life always has changing situations, personally, collectively, different times, different years, different places. And there needs to be a deeper understanding conceptually of what all this means in order to understand how it applies. And that's why the oral Torah is extremely important. Eventually, the oral Torah was written down in a manner that didn't give every explanation, so it still required an analyzation, adaptation, thinking, and learning and expression in an oral sense. But that's the whole idea of us getting together orally. I share with you and you share back with me that we just have this oral exchange, and that's what learning is all about at the end of the day. You can read it yourself, but it's not the same. You need to have that oral exchange and that oral sharing, so to speak. And that's the idea of and that's the idea that you want to we want to share some information from the oral Torah, from the Rabbanan, about the Parsha. So the first thing we learn about the Parsha in Korach is that there was a dispute. It doesn't actually say the word dispute clearly, but there's no question. When we read the narrative, you'll see there's a disputation, there's an argument, there's fighting going on. Let's take a look. Korach was the son of Yitzhak, the son of Kohath, plate 21, the son of Levi. He separated himself. What does that mean? What does it mean when you separate yourself from everybody else?
He took away from himself and pulled himself apart.
Right. That is divisiveness. That is argument. That is, I don't want to get along. I don't want to work it out. I want to be, we're done. I mean, if a husband and wife separate, that means that the divorce is imminent. That means to say that that there's arguing going on. And arguments are problematic. But the fact that it very begins with Korach separating himself, as the very beginning, it tells you that he's already, it doesn't even matter what the argument's about. Just want to argue. The Hebrew word that is used is vayikach, to take. Now, when you take something for yourself, so to speak. That means you take a position. Whether or not there's a position to take, you're taking one. Whether or not there's a room for argument, you're finding one. You just get it. You just get a kick out of this whole argumentation the situation. And I'm sure in your life you found people like that who just like to get into arguments for argument's sake, so to speak.
The whole modern society is infected with that disease.
Is that true?
Don't you feel that way?
Among other diseases, right? No doubt about that. But I guess you're right, Baruch, in the sense that in terms of our society and the recent political climate, which has been so filled with with vilification and people just harming one another, and talking bad about one another. This guy's bad and that guy's bad. And I don't like this guy, I don't like that guy. When was the last time you heard a politician stand up and say, you know what? My opponent's a fine fellow. I'm just a bit better. When you hear that? Right? Put down. So you're right about that, Baruch. And I guess in a sense, therefore, Korach does have a very important contemporary lesson. But he makes the separation. But who is Korach? Well, let's go back. He's the son of Yitzhar. Okay, son of Kohath. Maybe not such well-known people. The son of Levi. Well, everybody knows him. Who's Levi?
Great-grandfather of Moses and.
Correct. He's also one of the 12 tribes.
He's one of the 12 tribes.
Okay, he's a pretty important guy. And of course, the whole tribe of Levi are very distinguished people.
They help the Kohen.
They have what?
They help the Kohen.
And help the Kohen. And out of the Levi comes the Kohen. So you've got a lot of distinguished people here. And Korach's part of that distinguished, he's got good heritage. He comes from good stock. The only thing I find funny about it is that usually when you call a person, you call him by him and his father's name. You don't go back to the grandfather or the great-grandfather, whatever. I mean, he's going back here, father, grandfather, great-grandfather. I mean, what's the point here in terms of going all the way back to Levi? Along with him, he brings a guy named Datan and Aviram. Datan and Aviram are people who are, I beg your pardon?
Princes, leaders.
Right, but Datan and Aviram have also been known to contribute a lot of trouble to the Jewish people. And I believe if you turn to the beginning of the portion of Shemot, the first portion of the second book, you will find that that's when slavery began in Egypt. You will find that Moshe Rabbeinu finally asserts his identity as a Jew on page 299. And he goes up. Moses grows up when it goes out to his brethren. Even though he's brought up in the palace, you can take a look at it with me together, 299. He's brought up in the palace with a silver spoon in his mouth as the daughter of Paro, the grandson of the son of the daughter of Paro, and the grandson of Paro, supposedly. And he doesn't know about the slavery. He knows all. He's probably an Egyptian, so to speak. But he finds out he's Jewish, and he becomes aware to the point where he goes out to his brethren and observes their burdens. Observing their burdens means that he senses their burden. He senses their suffering. He feels their pain. We learned from this, by the way, that's called growing up. Growing up means I care about somebody else. How do you know you're ready to get married? You're old enough to get married? Is you can feel the concern for another person. If you're ready for parenthood, by being able to give subject yourself and submit yourself and sacrifice yourself for the child. So Moshe grows up. He goes out to his brothers. He's no longer a young, selfish child, and he observes their burdens. He sees their suffering, and in seeing their suffering, he sees an Egyptian man striking a Hebrew man of his brethren. He realized that the Hebrew man that is being hurt is a Jew who is his brother. So what does he do? He then went and called a committee together to find out what was the problem why Egyptians hated Jews. No, it doesn't say that. Beg your pardon. I read it wrong. He went to the Jewish Federation to find out why there was Egyptian anti-Semitism. It doesn't say that. What does it say? It says here instead, he turned this way and that and saw there was no man, so he struck down the Egyptian and hit him in the sand. You see a non-Jew hitting a Jew? Bang! No issues, no questions, no ifs, no ands, no buts, no thinking. You don't think you. But he did think. He saw this and that. He looked around. There was nobody around. He didn't want to get caught. So it's a good idea. If you find anybody that's an anti-Semite, you want to punch him in the nose, it's a good idea, but don't get caught. That's what we're teaching.
Yeah, also be right that there were people around, but no one was doing anything about it.
Yeah, that's also a good insight. A good insight. And that's great. That's great insight. No one's doing it. He struck down the Egyptian. The next day, went out the next day. Behold, 2 Hebrew men were fighting. 2 guys are fighting with each other. He said to the wicked one, he called him wicked. Why did you strike your fellow? He calls him wicked because he struck him. In other words, if you strike somebody, you're wicked. So he called him wicked. Why did you hit your fellow Jew? We have enough problems with Egyptians hating us. Why do you hate each other? So he replied, who made you big shot here? Who appointed you a dignitary, a ruler, and a judge over us? You proposed to murder me as you murdered the Egyptian yesterday? Oh, Moshe got scared. Neither matter was known. Power heard about it. And he said, I'm going to kill this Moshe. Even though he is brought up in the palace, and my daughter raised him as an Egyptian, I see he's a traitor, and he goes over to the Jews, and I'm going to kill this Moshe Rabbeinu. And Moshe fled, and set over the land of Midian, they sat by a well, and of course, we all know that the Chazal teach that he fled from Paro. It's taught later on that actually you can see it here on page over here on page 395. You can see that Moshe that the Moshe took Zipporah as a wife on 395 line 3. Yisro, his brother, his father. We'll talk about Yisro, the convert, who was the father-in-law of Moshe Rabbeinu. His daughter is Zipporah. Zipporah marries Moshe Rabbeinu, and she's his wife. And he had 2 sons. Now take a look at the sons. Following me in 395, the 2 sons. One is Gershom, and the other is Eliezer. Let's take a look at Eliezer for a second. Eliezer. That's 2 Hebrew words into one. Becomes a name called Eliezer. And it's a popular name. A lot of people have that name, right? They shorten it to Eli sometimes, right? But it's a popular name, Eliezer. How did Eliezer get his name? Eliezer.
My
El-
God,
God is my help.
my God,
God help.
my God, my help.
God help.
God is my help.
So good it says here. For the God of my fathers came to my aid and saved me from the sword of Paro. He's referring to the fact that he fled from Paro. Is that correct? So once he fled from Paro, ran to Midian, married Zipporah, had the boys. He comes to Midian. He has his new child, Eliezer. He names him after the fact that God saved him from Paro. But it says he saved him from the sword of Paro. So what this point over here in 395 elaborates upon, back to our page in 299, is that what had really happened was that Paro actually caught him. And he actually brought him to justice. And he had his sword over his head. And he's going to kill him. And God saved Moshe with the sword. It means that Paro picks up the sword, and Paro picks up the sword, brings it down on Moshe's neck, and miraculously the neck turns into marble, stone, and breaks the sword, and Moshe Rabbeinu flees. So that's how that story goes. What's important here is that Paro heard about it. Who did Paro hear it from? Maybe those 2 guys that were fighting. Who were they? Who were those 2 guys? And they were Datan and Aviram, the same 2 guys that are appearing over here. And Rashi says it. Rashi says clearly those 2 people are Datan and Aviram. And they also, he says they also committed the crime when the man came down later on years, the Jews were in the desert, and the man is coming down from heaven every day with caution not to take extra, but rather to take just enough for your portion for the day. They took extra. Wherever they could to cause issues and fighting and disputing, they seem to surface. And here they surface again in our Parsha, which is on page 821. Let's go back to 821. We got the Dasan and Aviram to deal with. Dasan and Aviram, and then he has the sons of Eliav and On, and the son of Peles. They stood before Moshe Rabbeinu, 250 men and children of Israel, leaders of the assembly. Once again, big shots. Remember last week's big shots that turned into spies, that turned into bad report about Eretz Yisrael, right? So these are the people, also big shots. They're summoned for meeting, men of renown. These are the big shots of town. They gathered together against Moshe and against Aaron and said to them, it's too much for you. For the entire assembly, all of them, that means us, are holy, and Hashem's among us. Why do you exalt yourselves over the congregation of Hashem? Who made you the big shot? And Moshe hears this, it falls on his face. And usually falling on the face simply means I got no response. I can't dignify it. I can't dignify the accusation. Point is that Korach does want to get into a dispute. He wants to get into a rabble rousing. And Moshe then speaks to Korach, gets up, and the entire assembly. In the morning, he says, Hashem will make known the one who is his own and holy one, and he will draw him close to himself, and whomever he will choose, he will draw himself close to him, close to himself. So here's what you're going to do to be able to figure out who Hashem is going to choose. If you're fighting with me, here's what we're going to do. Take for yourself fire pans, Korach and the entire assembly, put fire in them, place incense upon them before Hashem tomorrow. The man who Hashem will choose, who's the Holy One, and he will choose from this procedure. It is too much for you, you offspring of Levi. What do you mean by it's too much for you, offspring of Levi? Why are you trying to, you offspring of Levi, why are you seeking more? What kind of jealousy and what kind of greed that possesses you to want more than you already got? Well, what does he already have? He's a member of the tribe of Levi. Can you beat that? He's a top man in the community, well respected, and he seems to get into an argument. What's the argument for? He wants more. What does he want more? So Moshe said to Korach, "Here now, you offspring of Levi." He doesn't even call him by his name or dignify him. He calls him the offspring of Levi. It is not enough for you that Hashem, the God of Israel, segregated you from the assembly of Israel to draw you near to himself, to perform the service of the tabernacle of Hashem, to stand before the assembly, to minister to them. Ever got an important enough job? You're not satisfied? He drew you near, all your brethren, the offspring of Levi, with you, and yet you see priesthood as well. It simply means he wants to be a Kohen. Right? It simply means that now he's going after the kahuna of Aaron. We learned from this a couple of interesting things about dispute. But before we get into that, when he said at the beginning, on page 821, he says in verse 3, it is too much for you. Now he's talking to Moshe Rabbeinu. You got too much honor here, too much power. The entire assembly, all of us, are holy, and Hashem's amongst all of us. Why do you exalt yourselves over everybody else? Who made you the leader? In other words, to say that any one of us are capable of being a leader. Any one of us could be great. We're all holy. We all have Hashem in our midst. We all experienced the Hashem speaking. We all experienced all the miracles of Hashem. And we're all as smart as you. And therefore, I'm sorry?
you're no better than
You're no
us.
better than us, so therefore, I mean, we're challenging your leadership. Presumptive as it is, because in fact, who said that you should, who said that Hashem told you to lead? What's interesting about this is that Korach is possessed with greed, obviously. But let's take a look at it without me saying it. Let's take a look what the commentary says on page 820, the left-hand column, Rebellion in the Wilderness. In contrast to earlier occasions when the people complained about water or food, or even to take a new God, idolatry, and make a killed camp, for instance, as an intermediary between God and Israel. In this story, it's an outright rebellion, an attempt to overthrow Moshe and Aaron's leaders of the nation. I'm not interested in food, I'm interested in water, I'm not interested in getting a new God. That's all I want to do is take over the leadership. Leader of the rebellion is a cousin, a fellow Levite named Korach, because as you said earlier, Moshe is a Levite as well. So there's a cousin, not a very friendly cousin, but a cousin. And he wants to challenge Moshe Rabbeinu's leadership. So Korach has to attract a lot of people. And to try and champion the masses and become a champion of the masses, he discredits Moshe. We talked about that earlier. The other guy's no good, I'm better, elect me. Now, let's now go on 820 to the right-hand column, the very last two lines. Korach's resentment begins when Aaron was made Kohen Gadol. And their cousin, Elitzaphan, Uziel, was placed in charge of Kohats. This made Korach, this Elitzaphan, was Elitzaphan there, right? Elitzaphan, right, became Korach's superior, and Korach felt that should have been his. At the beginning, Korach did not dare criticize Moshe, beloved by the people as he was. They would not have tolerated such a rival. However, after the fiasco of the spies, last week's Parsha, and the decree that an entire generation would die in the wilderness, and now we have to wander 40 years, will they ever see the land? Korach took advantage of the national dissatisfaction to make a rebellion. It's a good time as any to prove that Moshe Rabbeinu is not a good leader. And so he argues the following. He says, if all of us are equal, equality, and no one's better than the other. And if you think about it, this is a very interesting argument. It smacks of the equality of communism. We're all communing together, we're all equal. Everyone's, no rich, no poor, no middle class. Everybody's the same. And if everybody is the same, then who's to say who's better to become a leader? Certainly, Moshe, you've taken a leadership that you may not be deserving of. So maybe I'm better. He's not necessarily arguing right away that he's better, but he's discrediting Moshe. The fact that he wants to put himself in that position and is discrediting Moshe. But then he goes after the praying brother Aaron, because Aaron's Moshe's brother. He wants to go after both of them together. He wants Moshe the leader, Aaron the Kohen. He wants both positions rolled up into one for himself. But the idea of presenting himself or submitting himself to be a leader is based upon discrediting the current leaders.
Mm-hmm. So the American Constitution is wrong because the American Constitution says all men are created equal. This sounds wrong according to this fellow.
No. All men are created equal. All men are created equal.
Yeah.
In value.
Right? All men are created equal. But then people move forward. Certain people are smarter. Certain people have this position, that position. People are, this guy becomes a doctor, that becomes a guy becomes a lawyer, that becomes a garbage man. It doesn't mean that we look down upon the Kohanim. Remember, each person has his own job to do. The equality is in terms of our obligations to Hashem and how we're created. But the jobs that we do vary. We're different. You have that job, you have your job, you have your job. It's that job. Those are things to do. And no one does the same. But the point is that sooner or later there needs to be an overall leader who will direct all of us in the paths that we need to be in. That leader was appointed by Hashem. For that matter, current leaders are also appointed by Hashem. How? In terms of how much learning that person has built up within himself and work he's put in to be able to lead effectively. And so the man who is learned has become a rabbi. He has the ordination or the authority given to him by Hashem in order to help lead the people. And that's Moshe Rabbeinu, our rabbi.
So Korah's rebellion is really not against Moshe, it's really against Hashem.
Correct. But it takes the form of Moshe so that this way what he can do is he can deflect any negativity against himself. But in so doing, what Korah does is he gives good examples. He says, for instance, there's a mitzvah called mezuzah. Everybody knows you put a mezuzah on the door. Why? Because you want to give some holiness to your room, holiness to your house. And so the house becomes holy with that little mezuzah of a little scroll on parchment, just like a Torah, but only 2 portions. It's a little mini Torah, so to speak. Then you've got, of course, the big Torah in the shul. Said Torah, I got an idea. How about if I fill the room full of Torahs? Do I still need a mezuzah on the doorpost? Interesting argument. Do I still need that? Furthermore, he said, remember we just last week at the end of the Parsha last week, we learned about tzitzis. And we learned that, we talked extensively about it on Sunday. The tzitzis reminds us of Hashem, particularly the thread, the blue string. One of the strings is blue, the techeles. Huh?
Nighttime.
Correct. But the tzitzis teach you this reminder of Hashem. Because the techeles, the blue thread, reminds you of the sea. The sea reminds you of the heavens, and the heavens reminds you of God. So that's how it serves a good reminder. Like a mezuzah reminds you of the door. How about, said Korach, if I take this garment and make it all blue thread, all tcheles? I don't have tzitzis in it. So in a way, he's challenging halachic observance. He may very well become the first conservative rabbi. There's no need to follow the particular halacha, the particular details as explained by the Talmudic scholars, because I've got a better way to do it, an easier way. Just make a whole column of tcheles. And even if it doesn't sound plausible, theoretically it makes sense to the extent where I don't need all these little details that Jewish law makes me observe if I can do it in a better way. I'll do it my way. So he becomes really the first compromiser of Jewish law. And he seeks leadership to do so. And I guess throughout our history, we've been beset with that, even to this very day, with conservative and reform groups that seek to change Jewish law and Jewish observance. And do so with very cogent arguments, but without an absolute sense of loyalty to the tradition that's been handed down from Moshe Rabbeinu throughout the generations and to the current leadership and how they tell us what to do. And so I think it's really necessary to be able to, sometimes you can take trips in 2 different fashions. We can go all the way back to Mount Sinai, the Moshe Rabbeinu, and then follow the the path, and the books you can learn to do this, and follow the path of how Judaism and the Torah has been taught and transmitted through the generations until we get to today. Or we can go backwards. We can start from today and go back, and to the beginning. What's the value of going backwards? The value is that I deal with today. Who are the leaders of today? So that I know, excuse me, what, could you move me a couple of minutes, please? Thank you. I know the leaders of today, today's generation. And I follow what they teach and I read their books or hear their speeches, and I'm able to connect on a live basis.
So,
But then, in order for me to realize their authoritative leadership, I need to then step back and say, where'd they get it from? 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 All the way back to Moshe Rabbeinu to see that it's authoritative and that there's an unbroken chain of tradition.
chain transmission.
So transmission. So the idea is, thank you. I didn't make the bracha here because I made the bracha already. Shouldn't think that. Maybe people accuse me.
No questioning the rabbi.
Certainly not in the Parsha Korah. Of all places, right? And so, in a way, there's a value of going backwards because we do need to deal with contemporary. I mean, who's my teacher? And who taught him? And who taught him? And going all the way back. And we can then begin to have a sense what we're doing and how we need to do it. Korach had no such.
Is Chavetz Chaim your and
Well, Chavetz Chaim, let's say 100 years ago.
yeah, is that your direct line of transmission?
Yeah, sure.
No, I'm just trying to trace that back.
Yeah, so we can go back to from today's world, or Rabbi Yoshev and Rav Shach, back to Moshe Feinstein, back to Chavetz Chaim, like you say, and back to the Vilna Gaon, and we can continue in that path. But Korach challenges all this, and says that I come up with new ideas, new laws, his own initiative, his own creativity, without any sense of conforming to at least the framework that was originally established by Moshe Rabbeinu when he came from Har Sinai. He's challenging Moshe himself, the man who brought the whole tradition in the first place. And so his first major transgression is a transgression of breaking halacha. His second major transgression is that he does not believe in status. And we've talked about status before. Status is, to some degree, God-given, and that people are born into. So we've talked about the need of change. And our generation likes to talk about change a lot. I was born this, I want to be that. We really can't change a lot of things. You can change your own commitments and your own development and your own intelligence and your own learning and growing, but you are what you are, basically. The whole concept, the notion of conversion, that kind of change, is really, if you think about it, quite novel. It's quite almost revolutionary. Who said you could change? I mean, if you're born, but you're born. So we see that that's not true only because of the fact that the conversion factor is based upon what you learn, and based upon what you commit to, and based upon what you understand, and based upon your own personal integrity. That's different. Other than that, you just can't change what you are. So of course we always know about the Korach wants to become a Kohen. But we know that you can't become a Kohen unless you're from the Kohen family. You just can't be what you're not. And generally speaking, the whole idea of being of this is the sense of its transmission through family, and you have to be loyal to your family. Of course, we all tell the joke about the guy that wants to become a kind. You know, everyone knows the joke, right? Everyone, you can't tell it. Okay.
I don't
Who doesn't know?
I don't know.
Okay. A guy wants to become a kind. So he goes to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I'll pay you $25,000 for me a kind. You can make me a kind. I was like, all day. So the rabbi said, I can't do that. The Jewish law, this, that, and that. He said, Rabbi, $50,000, make me a coin. And the rabbi says, if this is really challenging my integrity. Finally, he says, why do you want to become a coin anyway? He says, it's simple. My father was a coin, my grandfather was going to make me a coin. So I made $50,000 very easily. Right? Based upon someone's ignorance, you can make a lot of money off the guy. We live in a world of boys want to become girls, girls want to become boys. You know what you are. You don't like what you are, complain to God. Yeah.
Just the things that I heard that now they have to read down the legislator to define who is the male and who is the female. They wrote the definition in the state Congress of Oklahoma.
Who? Of Oklahoma? Who cares who lives in Oklahoma anyway?
And,
Bunch of Okies, who cares about that?
yeah, but it's madness. But the second thing, Korach was a jealous guy
Very jealous.
because he was the firstborn, right, from the coming.
Correct, but also understand, he's upset because El Tzafon was picked up, El Tzafon became his superior. He thought he deserved El Tzafon's job. So I didn't get that one, I'm going for the big shot, I'm going for the top. But I think here's Korach's greatest problem. Korach's greatest problem is explained in two different Mishnahs, two different Talmudic statements. One is a statement that says that later on, we're going to learn that the Torah says something very interesting. You should not become like Korach. Okay, well then tell me Korach is out there not to become. So the Gemara says, the Talmud says that's a person who not only makes an argument, but hangs on to it for argument's sake, simply to divide people. Well, what is the idea of divide?
Peace.
Divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. In other words, idea that I can get you all fighting against each other, and there's such chaos going on that you're going to beg for help. Here I am. That is classic communism. That's communism in its most pristine state. They killed the Tsar in 1905, and then in 1917, they declared the establishment of the Union of the Soviet Union. And the question is, what did they do in Russia for 12 years, between 1905 and 1917, when they had no government? They killed each other. This were the Reds, these were the Whites, fighting. Brothers and family members killing each other. Why? Because no one knew who was right and who was wrong. But that's the whole idea. If you want to take over leadership and really control, which is the desire of people like Korach, then what you need to do is get enough infighting to emerge as the only person that can bring peace to people who are strifed and overwrought and destroyed by war. And so that's Korach's plan. The Gemara says, whoever provokes argument, whoever provokes dispute, whoever keeps the dispute going and can't wait and cannot find a way to resolve it, that person is Korach. And the Torah says, don't become like Korach. Defining Korach as that he fights against halacha Jewish law, that's one problem. That he fights against status is another problem. And he refuses to accept the status as God-given, that's another problem. These are all side problems. His main problem is he wants to be the best. And in a way, we find that today's splinter groups in Judaism tragically doing the same thing. If, let's say, Reformed conservative Judaism wants to break halakha and doesn't want to follow the law, okay. Listen, some people find it too hard. So people can't be observant. I understand. Everybody's, try to be the best you can be. And if, let's say, you want an easier life, less burdensome. I understand that too. Don't condone it, I understand it. But don't make a whole movement, grouping, religion on its basis and grant yourself legitimacy. We don't have to observe because we're reformed. We don't have to observe because we're conservative. That is dividing yourself and dividing the people into separate groups and groupings in which these Jews are doing this and those Jews do that, and the two don't connect anymore. We're no longer a brotherhood. We're no longer a family. We're no longer a nation. And that's what Korach wanted to do. And that's what these groups are doing. We made a new group. I'm not as observant as an Orthodox Jew. I understand. Do the best you can. But I don't have to because I've joined a different group. So that means that we're no longer a Jewish people, no longer a Jewish brotherhood, no longer a Jewish nation. And that becomes dangerous for our existence. Korach is endangering all of us. And his greed is provoking it, particularly because Korach is very known to be extremely wealthy. He was very wealthy. And more important than that, he also had this great distinction. He's a lady. He's a big shot. He's a member of the big shots. And he wants more. It's his greed, it's jealousy, it's all the negative mindset that people have that in fact provoke and promote all this kind of tragedy. What is greed and jealousy? So each one of us needs to check into ourselves. He's got a nicer car. He's got a nicer house. He's got nicer furniture. He has more respect. He has more friends than the others. Everyone's jealous of the other person. And no one really is grateful for the gifts that Hashem has given them for themselves, for who you are and for what Hashem has granted you. And so we need to learn this Parsha and learn about him in order to learn how to remove those negative characteristics and to remove the need to seek more than in an argument, I want to be right. Isn't it better to have peace, maybe not be so right? Isn't it better to try and work it out rather than to try and say, I stand for being right and so forth? And this is what provokes Korach and what is potential in every one of us, because Korach had everything going for him, and he still succumbed to this, and he still fell down to it. So we could be very fine people, good people, and have great things going for us in our lives, and so on more. And that's a natural human tendency that exists inside every single one of us. We all have that tendency to want more. And when you want more, let's say spiritually, we'll call that a kosher jealousy, for instance. So I'd like to learn more. He's more learned, I'd like to be as learned as him. He's more religious, I'd like to be as religious as him. That's a kosher jealousy, only insofar as what it does is it pushes you towards better performance. But in of itself, it's it only leads to the attempt to achieve greater status, greater applause, greater vanity, and this is destructive. Destructive for yourself, and destructive for certainly for yourself as well. In any event, Korach is a bad guy. Korach has got bad qualities, but the worst quality of all is being argumentative. You got to watch it with people also, with other people. Watch them. Watch where you see them being argumentative and divisive. Stay away from those kind of people. Because at the end, the Torah teaches, the Mishnah teaches that there is two kinds of disputes in the world, two kinds of machlokes. What?
One for heaven.
One for heaven and one not for heaven. One for God. So to give you an example, here's a machlokes, the Shem Shemayim, for the sake of heaven.
Change your mind.
Who are they?
What?
Name the people that are involved, the Mishnah says.
Hillel
Shemayim.
Hillel and Shammai. Right. Hillel and Shammai, right? Every time you turn the page at a Talmud, they're arguing. Hillel, this, Shammai says that.
360 degrees.
Every time Hillel says it comes Hanukkah, she light the candles on Hanukkah. One the first night, two the second, three the third, four the fourth, and so forth. Shammai says backwards. Do 8 the first night, 7 on the second night, 6 on the third night, and go backwards. Now, there are real logical good reasons for this dispute. But the point is, they're always arguing all the time. And they're the best of friends. And they're the best of friends. And the fact that they were Zugod, the fact they were so, they're a partnership. They're a couple. And they work together. That's a kosher dispute.
But their
And it doesn't
disciples
last.
misunderstood.
And it doesn't last either. You know why it doesn't last? Because it lasts only insofar as that we remember both opinions, even though we follow one. Yes, we follow most of the cases Hillel. But the reality is that I do bother to study Shammai's position. I do bother to record Shammai's position. Because his positions are valuable too, even if we don't follow it. It's valuable to hear and understand his point. That's a machlokas, and where both people have no vested self-interest whatsoever, purely I want to know God's law. I want to understand God's rule in the best way that I can understand. And so we study it all the time. But the machlokas, the dispute, that is shalom l'shem shemayim, not for the sake of heaven, but rather a dispute that is promoted by vested self-interests. That's the dispute of Korach versus, what does it say there? It doesn't say Korach versus. It says Hillel versus Shammai. That it does say. But then it says Korach and his gang. Why does it say Korach versus Moshe? The same way that it says Hillel versus Shammai. It says it's Korach and his gang.
Well,
Of course, right? What?
It says 8 Shammai.
Whatever.
It's the house of Shammai.
Usually, to be right too, the disciples of Shammai are the disciples of Hillel. But why does it say Korach?
The meaning of Moses is Moshe Shammai.
Okay, because Moshe will change minds. But Moshe never dignified the machlokas. They're not arguing with me. I'm going to Shammai. And I don't consider your opinion of that. I need to respond to it. Then why does it say Korach and his gang? Because within his gang he fights. Within the gang he promoted fights. He had 250 people there, it says. Does it say that 250 people? Where is it? 250 people, men of renown on the third line of 821. These 250 people fight with each other. And the more creative.
Where does it say that? It doesn't say that.
Yes.
There's fire in there.
You got the whole page.
Numbers up 16, 8:21, verse 2. They stood before Moshe with 250 men from the children of Israel.
Tom Baruch, get with the program. Good job. Good job.
Gather.
Good natured fun. Don't get angry with me. So the idea is that in causing dispute amongst each other within our own group, what we do, of course, is move to find that Korach is the only person that can help us, and then by default he becomes the leader in order to consolidate all the dividing factors. In any event, as all this is beginning to emerge, right? So Moshe says, we're going to figure this out in the morning. And Moshe says to Korach, 8:23, verse 8. Here now, you offspring of Levi, is it not enough for you that you've already been chosen and segregated and drawn near to Hashem? You're different than the rest of the assembly of Israel. You've got a status. You perform the service of the tabernacle of Hashem. Stand before the assembly. He drew you near, and all your brethren, the offspring of Levi, with you, and you see priesthood as well. You want to become a Kohen too. You want Aaron's job too. You want everybody's job. Therefore, you and your entire assembly that are joining together against Hashem, that's the point, against Hashem. As for Aaron, what is he? That you protest against him? Go after me. And so what we've got here is a point of a terrible dispute. And Moshe Rabbeinu, the bottom of 8:23, verse 12, asks Don son of Avir to show up. And they said, we're not going. They simply they simply are not going, and they're not going up. The idea of not going up is an interesting expression, as if to say, to come to you, we have to go up. And what it implies by Rashi's explanation is that you're going to go down. And you're going down into the pit. So here comes Korach with further ideas. You brought us out from a land, in verse 13, that was flowing with milk and honey. Egypt, milk and honey. To cause us to die in the wilderness, because you didn't take us into Israel, because you listened to the spies. Now you want to dominate us, dominate further. You didn't bring, and now there's another land flowing with milk and honey you didn't bring us to. And you didn't give us a chance to go into Israel. So in page 825, verse 15, this distresses Moshe greatly. And once again, you have Moshe Rabbeinu in a position where you have to learn how to respond to attack. Moshe first falls on his face, and then he decides to fight with them. Which is interesting because last week, when the spies came at Moshe, he fell on his face again. But now, for the first time, we see that Moshe is standing up to the attack. And the reason for this is because Moshe realizes through a prophetic vision that this has to serve as an everlasting example of something that's going to happen that is highly unusual. What happened? So Moshe tells Korach in verse 16, you and your entire assembly before Hashem, everyone together, including my brother Aaron tomorrow, each will take his fire pan, incense in them, bring them before Hashem, 250 of your people, and Aaron and his his people. And they did it. They placed fire in them, put incense in them, stood at the entrance of the Mishkan with Moshe and Aaron. Korach gathered the entire assembly against them at the entrance of the tent of meeting. Now you've got this absolute confrontation, and the glory of Hashem appears in front of them and both in between them. Hashem tells Moshe and Aaron the following: separate yourself from this assembly, and I shall destroy them in an instant. Moshe again falls on his face. Did I say something funny? You said something funny. I should keep my eye on you. Verse 22, Moshe Rabbeinu does not want all of them to die. God is the spirit of all flesh. One man sins, you're going to be angry with everybody? Hashem told Moshe, speak to the assembly, get yourselves up from all around the dwelling place of Korach, Dathan, Abiram, leave them. In other words, separate yourself from them because they have already separated themselves from you. Moshe stands up with the elders of Israel and he speaks to everybody and he says the following: if any of you out there are thinking of joining Korach, think twice. Turn away from them, verse 26, from the tent of these wicked men. Do not touch anything that belongs to them, because you'll perish with all of them, because they're going to perish. Everybody moved away from Korach, from Dathan, from Aviram, from all around. Dathan and Aviram on 8/27 goes out with their wives, children, and infants. And Moses said to them the following: to this you shall know the truth. Something unusual is going to happen here. Hashem sent me to perform all of these acts. It was not from my heart. I have been appointed by Hashem. And this is going to be a proof. If these people will die, like the normal death of all men, verse 29, and the destiny of all men, then it was not Hashem who sent me. Then you can be sure that I'm the wrong one. But if Hashem will create a phenomenon, and the ground will open its mouth and swallow them, and all that is theirs, and they will descend alive to the pit, that means they'll go be buried alive, then you'll know that these men have provoked Hashem, and I'm the truth. When he finished speaking these words, the ground that was under them split open, an earthquake. The earth opened its mouth, swallowed them and their households and all the people who opened their cars and the entire wealth. All that was theirs descended alive to the pit. The earth covered them over, and they were lost from among the congregation. That means not only did they die, they never had even a share or an opportunity for the world to come, for hereafter. They were obliterated forever. All of Israel was around, fled at the sound. They were afraid that maybe the earth will swallow us. A flame came forth from Hashem, consumed the 250 men who were offering the incense. How did Moshe know this was going to happen? Well, I mean, Hashem brought the earthquake. He didn't bring the earthquake. How did he know this was going to happen? We're living near the San Andreas Fault here in Los Angeles in LA. How did the earthquake happen?
So the 1991 earthquake, was that decreed by?
It was 1994.
1994, sorry.
Yep, right there.
Was it a decree? Was there a decree?
Wouldn't you think?
But was there a decree?
Let's ask the following question. Where did the 1994, you guys don't remember 71, so we'll give it 94. Where was the 94 earthquake? Where did it start? Northridge, which, by the way, happens to be the home and the center of pornographic movies. Yeah, that would be, it just happens to be a fact. Pornography comes from Northridge. Right. Now, what's the concept of this, in fact? So let's understand the following. The Mishnah teaches that after God finished creation, after the 6 days were over, came Shabbat. But just before Shabbat started, towards dusk, just before candlelight of that first Shabbat in history, after creation, God created 10 more new items. Those new items were not the last on the agenda, but they were added as creations because they're not part of the normative of the world and will only emerge under certain unusual circumstances. One of them was the rainbow. The rainbow didn't emerge until after the flood. That's 1,000 years later. But, and there's a whole bunch of others. I mean, just a little insight into what what were the other things that were created? Oh, the traveling well that traveled with the Jews in the desert for water, right? That was created on Friday before sunset. 1 second.
That's Perky Avot.
That's right. That's what I'm looking at. We're going to learn next week about a talking donkey. Right? The talking donkey was created on Friday before creation. The man that came down in heaven to the earth to feed the Jews in the desert, that was created on Friday before sunset. The staff that Moshe used to split the sea and make all those plagues was created on Friday before and the tablets and and actually the unknown burial place of Moshe Rabbeinu, who was buried by Hashem, was created at that time as well. Some say that when Avram Avinu went up to the mountain to slaughter his son according to God's command, the Akedah, and there was a ram there whom he took instead in order to replace Yitzchak, his son. That ram was placed there from creation. What is implied here is that oftentimes unusual phenomena occur. They're never to be considered as brand new. Nothing is brand new. Nothing new under the sun. Everything was created in the first 6 days, including those extra 10 that were created at the last moment before Shabbat. These last minute additives are not part of our normative world. What they are things that God plants within the structure of our universe to respond to unusual circumstances, to respond to unusual situations. Korach was an unusual situation. It was a rebellion that was certainly that was caused by greed, by envy, by jealousy. It was a rebellion that is not the normal way to live. And abnormal behavior deserves an abnormal response. An odd, strange situation requires an odd and strange punishment. The earthquake is done as a highly unusual phenomena to swallow up this highly unusual situation of rebellion. Rebellion is inherently unhealthy. It's inherently argumentative, separative, disunified. It's inherently destructive. It breeds destruction. It breeds harm. And it harms all the people in its way. That's why people have to be so careful to stay away from arguments and fighting. And the response is an earthquake. What's an earthquake? An earthquake is to undo the solidification of our world. We feel very confident walking on solid ground. The world was filled with water, so God just placed it to give us solid ground. Many of the planets out there are uninhabitable by human beings. They can't be life on those planets because they don't have solid ground. God presents this gift which allows for humanity to survive. God then undoes the gift when people no longer act like human beings. And what we understand is that truth in its pristine sense, is that same solid ground that we rest upon. Just like we rely on solid ground to maneuver and to navigate, we rely on truth to be able to support our actions and behaviors, because deceit will destroy. Because when you try something that's inherently lying or inherently untrue, what you will eventually find out is that you're no longer on solid ground. And you're shaky. And your position is shaky. And your attempt to move forward is inhibited by danger. So along comes Hashem and says, Emes me'eretz titzmoch. Truth emanates from the ground. Therefore, the ground will open you up and destroy you as agents of the untruth, as agents of falsification.
Is that a pasuk? Emet
It's more. No, it's a pasuk. I beg your pardon, it's a pasuk. You're right.
from where?
Where?
Truth from the ground.
Truth emanates from titzmoch.
Tehillim.
Could be Mishlei, could be Proverbs. Could be. Now make me aroused. I gotta check. But
It's awesome. It's awesome.
it's an awesome statement. You're right.
But why from the ground?
Because the ground is solid. The ground supports
Oh, it's so
truth, supports our world. If you try to 2 + 2 is 5, it's a falsification. You can't function that way. You can't function with falsehood.
But there are people in the world that's trying to make 2 + 3 equal 5.
Well, that's it. You know, you try to live a life in which you, let's say, live a lie, self-deception, deception of others, and you live within a certain level of hypocrisy. Eventually, sooner or later, it catches up, and it ruins everything you've accomplished because it's not based in a source of truth. There needs to be a base or a source of truth that will emanate from there all of your activities, all of your achievements, all of your accomplishments. But if the source is inherently false, then everything crumbles. The earth cannot support itself. Life cannot support itself on lies. The truth will disseminate and will be achieved and be understood by mankind as the singular source for survival. Can't survive without it. Truth is connected in the Pirkei Avot with justice. It's connected with peace. Peace, by definition, is the alternative to destruction and the war. Like we said, in Russia, between 1905 and 1917, 12 years of absolute mayhem and chaos and craziness and millions of people dying. Now today, Russia made Ukraine. People died for nothing. That kind of warlike absence of peace is based upon falsehood. It's based upon a lack of justice. One nation invades another nation. The sense of destruction that causes how many innocent lives, how many men, women, and children, how many people died for no reason, simply because of a sense of falsehood. Well, this belongs to us, and you should have that, and I should have that, and I should have this control, you have that control, and so forth. So people who promote this kind of divisiveness, promote this kind of deception and untruth and falsity, they will be swallowed up by the earth, alive. Now, being swallowed up by the earth alive, it's certainly, I mean, people are standing there watching and go, whoa, Moshe prediction, what happens? Well, there's no doubt who's running the show, right? Moshe's leadership is reaffirmed by God's action. But the action was already prepared from before creation, from the 6 days of creation. But from the last day of creation, the 6th day, God already anticipated this issue and many other issues that are unusual. And unusual situations need unusual responses. But those unusual responses are not part of the normative. Since they're not part of the normative, you don't see them all the time. They come up just as a one-time occurrence because of those unique situations that occur on a one-time level. Yes, sir.
How do we know in which part we can find that created in the 6 days?
The Mishnah, Pirkei Avot, it's the 5th chapter.
The 5th chapter.
Yeah, the 5th chapter. By the way, that's interesting. You should bring that up. This week we learned the 5th chapter. What's the 4th chapter? Remember the 4th chapter? I lost count. Not so. Because the 4th. This week's the 4th chapter. Next week's the 5th chapter. But these are the situations that that bring about highly unusual behaviorisms, and this is a highly unusual tense situation. What's interesting to know is that the people that joined Korach, one of them was a man named On ben Peles. On ben Peles is mentioned in the first pasuk. On ben Peles On ben Peles is mentioned
He's the one with the smart one.
He's the one with the smart wife, that's right. His wife told him not to join, right? You always listen to your wife. The wife said, and this is where we have to learn a lesson, Chochmas Isha Bonsa Beisa. The wisdom of a wife builds a home. She told him, you're joining this guy, and he's rebelling against Moshe, and he's going to establish a new order and become the new king. And you're going to be as nothing as you are today. You're nothing today, you'll be nothing tomorrow. You think he's going to give you a big position? You're going to become a big shot? You become a zero. So he was saved, by the way. But then we learned later on, and I believe you can find it, hold on, I can find it for you. Later on, we learned that no, it doesn't say. I mean, it says, but I just don't know where it is. B'nai Korach lo mesu. The children of Korach didn't die.
Mhm.
The children of Korach didn't die. Where will I find it? I don't know if I'm lucky enough, Hashem will help me. Where will we find that the B'nai Korach, the children of Korach, didn't die? I don't know.
Not in the Torah.
And that's it.
Oh,
It's here. It's here. And B'nai Korach lo mesu. It's here in the Chumash somewhere. I can't find it. But B'nai Korach, the children of Korach did not die. Huh? The children of Korach did not die. Rabbis teach that who you hang around with is awfully important. And if you hang around with bad people, you're going to be drawn into bad situations. That's why these B'nai Reuben people were in big trouble. Because the 250 people that came from the tribe of Reuben joined in with Korach, and they got pulled into a total destruction, not of their own doing. Because you hang.
879.
What, 879? Who found it?
Yeah, verse 11.
Hey. 879, verse 11. In Pinchas, I think it was a Pinchas, right? Here it is. The sons of Korach did not die. 879, verse 11. This is a recounting of the story. And the recounting of the story talks about the people who are together with Dasan and Aviram were together with Korach. The earth opened its mouth in verse 10, swallowed them up. Korach and the death of the assembly, 250 people, and then the sons of Korach did not die. What does it mean the sons of Korach did not die? So basically, what we learn is two different opinions. Some say they did die, but before they died, they did tshuva. They repented. The very last minute, 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot on a banana peel. It was slipping into the grave. And at the last moment, they did tshuva. So some say that they did die, but they made it into Olam Haba, into the world to come. They made it into heaven. Others say that you actually didn't die. The sense of their not dying, doing tshuva, is an amazing lesson of how a man can live an entire life of evil and at the last minute change. And it's accepted. Now, that doesn't mean that you should therefore go out for the rest of your life and party in the bars of LA and then come back the last minute and say, I'm sorry. That's not the way tshuva is done. Tshuva is done on the basis of a sincere regret for what had happened, and it's based upon an absolute reaction, not a planned idea. If you're planning on doing tshuva, the rabbis say, come over. If it happens because there is a certain thing that occurs within you that immediately arouses you to do tshuva, and it's not planned. The sin wasn't planned with the tshuva. I'm planning to do tshuva so I can do everything I want right now. Yeah, people tell me that all the time. You know, Rabbi, I don't keep Shabbos right now, but I plan to do so in the next 10 years. Or whatever. You know, of course, you don't know if you're going to live the next 10 years. I once had a guy who called me up and said he wanted to come to learn. So I said, okay. And he said to me, he kept me on the phone about 20 minutes asking me all about the details of the class and all the things we learned. And at the end of the discussion, he said, I think I'll come in 6 months. So I got frustrated on the phone and I told him off. I blasted him. And I said, that's the stupidest thing I've heard in my life. If this is important to you, come now. Because you don't know what'll happen. Within the next 6 months, you can get hit by a car. Yeah. Well, but it's a pretty outrageous statement. It is outrageous, but it can happen. Don't take any day for granted. Begin to do tshuva now. Why do we accept tshuva? Why does Hashem accept tshuva and repentance before you die? Because you never know when you're going to die. Maybe tomorrow. Therefore, tshuva today. You never know tomorrow. But who thinks about dying tomorrow? Nobody. Right? But you should think that way. Because when you think that way, guess what? Every day for the rest of your life, you'll be doing tshuva and repentance. Whoa, is that awesome or what? What a way to live for the rest of your life. Right? I'm not keeping Shabbat right now. Gotta start. In a couple of years. I'm not ready yet for it. In a couple of years, we'll be dead. Oh, tomorrow, next Shabbat. You never know what happens. But then Korach, at the last minute, realized the error of their ways. And the rabbis teach a very interesting thing. The way that they did the tshuva is by, as they're slipping into the grave, right? The earth's opening, they're slipping into the grave. They start screaming with their hands are stretched out. Moshe Emes. Moses is the truth. The Torah Emes. And his Torah is the truth. And then in they went, according to some opinions. Rabbis teach that on Simchat Torah, when we celebrate Simchat Torah, and we celebrate the simple Torah with the dancing with the Torah in the synagogue around the bima, right? That one of the songs we sing is Moshe Emes, the Torah Emes. Moshe is the truth, Torah is the truth. Because that was what Bnei Korach said, and that's an eternal contribution, which we then never really got. Because why? Because their message is eternal. If they're eternal, they made a Torah Mabot. Now,
Well, they made it into Tehillim.
yeah, they made it into Tehillim as well. So the bottom line issue, of course, is the issue of the distinction of different people for different statuses. And the attack that Korach had against status was that status should not be conferred. I have a right to it. Anybody can do it. The Moshe doesn't deserve it. It's not God-given. It's not God-ordained. I want to be the leader. I want to be a Kohen. And the whole Parsha ends with the special distinctions of the Levi and the Kohen. And the special gifts that are given to them. And the special honor that is given to them. And you might argue, well, I mean, what did they do to earn it? You might argue, why can't I be a lady? I said the joke. And then, of course, people always then think about it from another perspective. Why was I born this way? Well, why can't I be born that way? Or why can't I be what I want to be? And if we learn the sense of accepting your destiny as God has saw fit to make you. with the realization and the proviso that the singular thing you control in this world is what you believe in and what you commit your life to and how you conduct your life in terms of an acceptance of Torah of Hashem. In that sense, everyone's equal. Because why? Because everyone's got a different way or perhaps method of serving Hashem. But at the end of the day, the equality of all is the service of Hashem. And Korach was serving himself. And there's no greater idolatry than yourself. When at the end of the day, you begin to think about what's motivating you or what you're living for and what's it all about and who's the determining factor. It's either Hashem or yourself. It's either your personal gaiva, your personal arrogance, and your personal vanity, and your personal interests, or is it a submission to the higher power, submission to Hashem, realizing that whatever I have is not self-earned, it's all a gift from Hashem. And I'm delighted with my gifts. And so that's this lesson of Korach. It's interesting that it occurs right here in the sense that the Jews are in a very vulnerable state. We just had this horrible episode of the spies. The spies have spoken bad about Israel. God has decided in his anger that we can't go. And we're destined to wander for 40 years. And there's a lot of despair, a lot of lack of hope. I'm sorry?
They're dropping like flies.
Right, and frankly, you think about it in terms of the last 2,000 years, how easy it would have been for Jewish people to give up hope. Mashiach's coming. When? Today, tomorrow, next year, 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 2,000 years with Mashiach. How easy it is to lose faith, to lose hope. And that leads persons to do acts of despair, acts of desperation. Jews have stayed straight and not become desperate simply because of this absolute maintenance of the faith that a lot of people question. But if people question Mashiach, they got to question God himself and what the whole scenario is all about. And while we're questioning that, we come to the conclusion that either this is all true in terms of Hashem's reality, in terms of the creation of the world and the destiny of the world and the destiny of creation, or we give up hope and we live filled with wildness and craziness like they do out in like they do downtown. They have no hope. They have no sense of it says live for today, live for tomorrow. That's all it is. It's a tragic, meaningless existence of people who are basically in despair. When you find people that live sinful lives or lead lives that filled with all sorts of crime and destruction and so on, people in despair. People are desperate and have no sense of hope. And that breeds destruction. And that ends the world. And that ends the creation process that Hashem originated with. On the other hand, you see what happens to them. What happens? The earth opens up and there's massive destruction. And that has got to tell you that the alternative to faith is in fact destruction. Once people begin to realize that, faith takes on a reality. Hashem takes on a reality. And then that governs your life for the next day, the day after, the day after. Living with the kind of faith that you have a belief coming in the coming of Mashiach, in the belief that you feel he's coming every day. And even if he disappoints you that day, there's the blessing of tomorrow. If tomorrow the sun will shine, then tomorrow the Mashiach can come. And that's how people view life. That's the kind of life that becomes fulfilling, productive. Korach brings destruction on everyone else. But one last lesson of Korach. Don't hang around with bad friends. All those 250 people from B'nai Ruvain, they were nice people, but they hung out with the wrong crowd.
But his wife started everything, no?
His wife was part of it as well, no question. But, so you gotta pick a good one. Don't pick the wrong wife.
Good winner.
Buy me this, buy me that, buy me this, buy me that. But I think that the essential lesson of who you hang out with really tells you where you live. You live in a Jewish community, you live in a neighborhood where there's Jewish people, where there's a synagogue, where there's people of faith, or you live downtown. Now, I don't live downtown, I have a TV at home, and guess what? Every time I mention what's going on downtown, I just turn on the news. He killed him, and he killed him, and he killed him, and there's a massive traffic accident over there, and destruction over there, and there's a big bang up on the 101, 15 cars. Why should that be of interest? If it is, then go see it live. Who needs a TV? But people like that TV. The TV is protection from reality. But yet they want to indulge in it. How hypocritical. People need to understand that there are evil people in the world. You want to stay away from. And it's nice when you can live in your own isolated, self-supporting community where people live together, work together, and support each other and meet each other every Shabbat in the Knesset and so forth. That's how you avoid bad company. So, Bezrat Hashem, the Shabbat, we will see the Parsha. Next week, we're going to have a double Parsha. Oh my goodness. And we're going to learn about the talking donkey.
Wow, wow.